Right then guys, it's finally time to take a look at the chieftain, the super chieftain, the T95 FV201. Of course this was available, or still is I believe, within the challenges. You have to complete I think 400 points to be able to actually earn this tank. You only have 5 days remaining within the operation as of the recording of this video, but this one will basically be a review. We have some fantastic, I mean actually ridiculous gameplay within this thing, so if you're thinking about potentially grinding out those last couple of points, I would implore you to do so. This is one of the most broken tanks in World of Tanks that I think I've ever used. It just is unbelievable, and there's really no reason why you'd want to play the Super Conqueror. There's no real reason why you'd want to pretty much play the FV215B. And of course, there's probably not much reason why you'd want to play the standard chieftain, because this thing is just, as the name implies, realistically just a super chieftain. Now, what does this tank actually feature? Well, of course, it goes 46 kilometers an hour forward, which is much more than the Super Conqueror, so that's kind of where it excels over that tank and where you'll actually be able to use this tank to the best of its ability. And trust me, its best ability is just unbelievable within the game. Now, you don't have the best power to weight ratio of 14.17, but it is a heavy tank, and yes, you can get up to about 40 kilometers an hour, pretty standard in this tank. You're going to be able to actually, traverse fairly well in this tank as well, 33 degrees a second on your hull, and then your turret added on to that. You've actually got about 63 degrees total, so that's not awful. It's going to take you, 6 seconds, just under, to be able to fully rotate around, which isn't awful, and it's certainly better than something like an E100 within the game. Now, the real thing with this tank, however, comes with its gun. 270 meters of standard penetration, 322 with a premium, 0.31 accuracy and 2.1 second aim time. This is a heavy, by the way, not a medium tank, a heavy, and also, as if that wasn't bad or good enough, we'll whack in an 8.91 second base reload speed on the tank, meaning that, you can output 440 alpha damage every 8.91 seconds, and of course it does get 440, not your typical 400 that you get with some of the other British heavy tanks at tier 10. Which makes this tank so much nicer to play. Yes, you only have one shot per clip, it's not an autoloader as with some other British tanks, but no, this one is just, it doesn't need it, and it actually probably benefits from not having an autoloader because you can just pump out your shells constantly and consistently, and when you've got 2,200 hit points to trade as well when you're coming up against other heavy tanks within the game, you certainly aren't going to be having any troubles there. The standard round also has super high max speed of 1,150 meters a second, which means you can actually hit very, very reliably. I believe it's APCR as standard, not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure. APDS, APCR. So, pretty much both of your standard and premium rounds are APCR, meaning that you can get and consistently hit targets at long ranges because it's a faster round than something like a heat round. And that's not even one of the key aspects of the tank, which, for once in a tank's life, the turret armor is pretty much impenetrable on the T95 FV201 Chieftain. And yes, there is an area which you can pen. You see on the left hand side of the turret it is a little bit flatter, and you can see that bulgy bit that actually cuts in quite a bit. If you're above the tank you can pen this fairly reliably, and actually the cupola on the top is also a target that you can hit. But remember, this tank gets gun depression, and so you're going to be able to use that gun depression of 10 degrees to be able to get on that ridge line. You're going to increase the armor effectiveness of that kind of sloped bit, and don't even try on the right hand side because you'll just bounce, and the cupola just becomes non-existent when you're using that gun depression. Now, don't get me wrong, as with every single British tank, you're going to have that big fat lower plate which is going to be able to get penned by the majority of tanks that come up against you, along with that upper plate which, to be honest with you, is fairly strong, consistent against enemy tanks, especially if you side scrape and move and stuff like that. You do have those kind of flat bits on the left and right hand side of it that are going to be able to actually be penned by your opponents. However, they're going to be struggling to actually hit at the effective angle because it is kind of a weird shape, and it's also very hard when you're wiggling using the traverse speed of the hull to be able to kind of bait your opponent into firing at the wrong bit, and so you're going to have a good chance of bouncing. Now, as if that wasn't enough, yes, it gets spaced armor on the sides, meaning that you can side scrape. The one kind of negative about the tank in terms of its side scraping ability is, of course, it does get quite a boxy back, and you'll see that it's actually raised at the back of the hull. And when you side scrape, even though you have spaced armor, people can actually fire into that bit, which isn't particularly very strong. You probably won't be getting overmatched in the side, because it is actually fairly decent in terms of 88mm, meaning that no tank in the game is going to overmatch you in the side armor, at least in that point, but they certainly can get a good solid hit on you, and especially if you over angle, they're going to be able to pen you in that kind of back area as opposed to through the spaced armor. Now, where are the negatives of the tank? Well, you don't get the best DPM possible on a heavy tank. That probably goes to the FV215B, but you do get a very nice DPM, and certainly compared to medium tanks, you're actually not that far off. And when you've got the high penetration that you do with your standard, and also the 440 alpha over some of the medium tanks that don't deal as much, means you don't have to poke your opponents as much. And so, yeah, a fantastic tank. And that's enough of talking about the tank. Let's actually get into some gameplay and show you what it is like in the game, and we'll talk about the equipment setup in that game as well. Right, so the first game is by far the better of the two gameplays. However, the second one kind of features the tank in a more standard matchup compared to this one, where it was just unbelievable how much damage we racked up in such a short period of time. We're going to have a look at the map itself, Sand River. I'm going to tell you a little bit about where the best place to go, especially if you're playing a heavy tank with a good turret, and that is of course moving down into the central position that you can see me taking here. Now, we're not going to go right the way forward, we're not going to push too hard because, of course, with the most recent changes, as with Update 6.0, I keep saying recent, but they've been around for, nearly a year now, the spawns kind of changed, so the opponent team can actually get up onto the hill far more reliably than they used to be able to, and so you get into this kind of position where if you don't have a turret, you're going to be getting hit very, very easily, very reliably, and so, yeah, you kind of have to have that turret if you want to get into this position now, unless you're, of course, a light tank that can kind of hightail it out of there quickly enough to be able to avoid all of those shells. Now, what you do see here is me picking up 854 damage early on in the game. We're using that turret armor to be able to actually block some damage, only 400 so far, but that increases later on in the battle. Make that another hit into the Object 268 version 5, and this is where the tank becomes, or comes into its element, where you're using that gun depression of 10 degrees, as well as using the turret armor to be able to bounce shots, and then just using the DPM of the tank to just unbelievably just destroy the opponents that are in front of you. Yes, you do not have the best vision within the chieftain, or the super chieftain as I like to call it, but yeah, there's got to be some negatives at least to the tank, otherwise it would be just absolutely overpowered, as opposed to just being very overpowered within the game. Oh my god. We're going to put one into the Super Conqueror. I just think that the 440 alpha damage of this tank makes it just... whoa. It's something special. 7.7 second reload in the actual game, since we've got advanced loader, we've also got ventilation, and I think we have advanced optics as well to boost up that vision range just a little bit, so we're not as kind of immobile within the game. Now, as you'll see, 2,200 damage very quickly on into the game, only 2.5 minutes in. We're not in the best of positions here, as we're getting outspotted, and of course the enemy team are actually pushing down behind us. There's a T-57 heavy right there that we're going to put one round into him, and yeah, this is the kind of position that you want to be in this tank, and it just shows you the reload speed of this tank. E5 there, no match really compared to this tank. The E5 used to be a fantastic, and I mean a superb tank back in the day on World of Tanks, but it's just been left a little bit far behind. It just doesn't have that kind of pack-a-punch that it used to with the armor model, being able to bounce as many as it used to, and yeah, the gun's just not necessarily as competitive as it once was too. Now 3,193 damage out of the way, 400 blocked and 900 assistance means that, yeah, we're going to be able to actually have a fairly decent game. We spot that there is the T110E5 sat there, don't know what he's doing, 485 damage on him, and these are the rolls that you love to see in the Super Chieftain, just pumping out that damage super quick. E5 is still there, maybe he's AFK or something, although I say that and he fires at me, I don't quite know what's going on in his brain. But there we go, picking up more and more damage as we go, and of course firing as soon as you reload is something that you can only hope for within World of Tanks, and you do have to get a little bit lucky if you are in a position like this where you can just unload round after round after round into your opponents without them being able to do anything. Of course, aiming for that back of the tank to be able to put in rounds into the engine deck, of course hoping to get that fire. They're kind of extra things that you can do within the game to try and increase your chances of winning and just overall having the best game you possibly can. We try and get one into the IS-7, but it doesn't quite work. We've got an enemy T95 FV201 there, which is not a nice tank to face. As you can probably see, it's kind of the one counter to the tank itself, is having a the same overpowered tank against the same overpowered tank. And yeah, with a matchmaker, that doesn't tend to happen very often, whereby the matchups are actually balanced. So yeah, when you pick this thing, you'll know exactly what I mean. It's just utterly bonkers how much damage you can rack up so quickly. We're in a bit of a position where I just want to get as much damage, and so to be honest with you, I shouldn't have moved down. It was a bit of a mistake in just a second. I decided, you know what, screw this, I'm going in. I am going balls deep. But yeah, 7,147 damage. I'm hoping maybe, just maybe, I could get a 10k damage game within this tank, within probably the first 5 games that I'd even played within the tank itself. Do I think that this tank is overpowered? Well, yeah, I think that this tank is overpowered. When you compare it to the other tier 10 heavy tanks within World of Tanks, you don't have much to contend with, to be honest with you. They just aren't quite of the same caliber, and so yeah, I think this is this thing when you compare it to something like an IS-7, that yes, it does have the alpha, but the reload speed difference between the two are just immeasurable. It's just really something else, and unfortunately, because we got our driver knocked out, I wasn't able to then turn the gun to be able to deal with the other T95, and this becomes a pretty bad problem for us as we've lost all of our hit points and hoping we get taken out from the game. But 7,932 damage, 1,330 blocked. It's not a bad result for something that literally lasted about 6 minutes of the game. Yeah, really nice result, and of course we'll skip ahead now to the end of the video because I don't think you'll want to watch my team slowly get whittled down and then slowly whittle their way back to win the game. So there we go, a win, victory, 7,932 damage, 3 enemies destroyed, 1,697 base experience, a bit of assistance. That was a 9k combined damage game, certainly a good one. Managed to pick up a decent amount of silver, a lot of XP, and yeah, I think that was a decent result to show you how the tank actually plays itself, and we'll get into another gameplay to show you some more of the diverse gameplay that you can actually play within this thing. That was a bit more use of the DPM and the armor model. The next gameplay features a little bit of something else. And the second gameplay is El Alamein. For some reason I tend to do pretty well on this map regardless of what tank I play in. Don't know why that is, but yeah, I guess it's just the case. Now with this map, it's kind of a little bit difficult to decide where you want to go. It really depends. Whether you have a good game is entirely on where the enemy team goes, because if you go the flank that they're not, yeah, your team may lose the other flank, and yes, you may be able to get damage on them whilst they advance towards you, but often when that happens, you're in like a maybe 3 versus 10 scenario, and so often you can only get a couple of shots before you get surrounded and taken out of the game. With this game, however, what we're going to do is we're going to push towards that hill area and be able to get into a position where we can use the gun depression of the tank and therefore get the damage that we really do need within this tank. And yeah, the sooner you start racking up the damage, the sooner the enemy team get depleted, and then the faster you can actually move forward and deal damage to other people that you come up against, with a very nice roll on the T49 there, may I just say. 493. Yes, that is very nice to see that actually with the most recent kind of update to the RNG, yes, you can high roll once again, and it's so nice to actually see. I really didn't understand why Wargaming put in the plus 15% minus 25% RNG model that they used to have on console before, like update 7, if that makes sense, or on console between that period of update 6.0 and update 7, where they just messed around with the accuracy and the alpha damage on World of Tanks. Now, as you see, we are in a little bit of a nice position to be able to deal some damage to this M103 who's sat out in the open. Of course, not a good position to be able to get like spotted in and just putting rounds into the side of him. There is an SU-12254 that we have to be aware of, because, you know, that's a pretty meaty tank, and then artillery decides that, you know what, I'm going to take more than half your health in a single shot, because why not? M103 is still there, and we're going to put one more into him. Managed to hit the side of his turret, which is kind of a weak point. Those cheeks of the M103 are that big fat weak point, and so yeah, we can deal damage very consistently. There's 2 M103s over there. There's quite a few in this game for some reason. As you can see, the paper side of the turret is just, yes, got no match against the 270mm of standard penetration with this gun. 480 damage rolls, just rolling in and in and in, and we just heard that the artillery had a go at us again. Certainly should have been thinking a little bit more, because if I did get caught out, it really wouldn't have gone too well within this game. You know, this is the kind of brute strength of the T95 FE201, and that is just the DPM. You just really have no competitor when it comes to dealing damage and maintaining your hit points, although, you know, in this game we haven't maintained very well, but that's not really any fault of our own. You know, artillery can pretty much hit you wherever you are, and if they really do want to focus you, you don't have much of a chance, to be honest. Yes, you can avoid them to the best of your ability, but if you try and avoid them too much within a game, which I see a lot of people doing, you end up actually ruining your own game, because you play too passively, trying to avoid the artillery, that you don't push up and help your team when you could do, which allows artillery to hit you. Sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and hope that they don't, and that really leads to that kind of disparity between the better players choosing when and when not to. When are you most likely to be getting hit, and when are you not likely to be getting hit? So yeah, that's kind of the difference. This game, not particularly the best one. 3,800 damage, well, so far. 596 spotting damage. Put one into the side of the Object 268 version 5. We're going to put one more in potentially. Yes, we do. And then, of course, we've got the T95 FE201's backside. And you know what we always love, a bit of backside. Yeah, let's put that one round into him, and then we're going to put another one, hopefully, before he gets taken out. One lovely one, and we track him, allowing us to get a little bit of assistance damage, although it didn't actually count towards it, which is a little bit unfortunate, or at least it didn't give me any XP because it was such a minuscule amount. There is a TD and an artillery. We try and go for the blind fire, because we saw in the bottom left or bottom right of the map that there is a Jaegeru on the enemy team. Probably wasn't going to hit, but you never know. He could have been on top of the hill for some unbeknown reason to me, but unfortunately he wasn't, and we haven't picked up any more damage. End of the game there, 5,255 damage, 596 assistance, grand totaling 5,800 combined damage, which, yeah, pale in comparison to the first gameplay, but not a bad one, and considering I've only played about 7 or 8 games within this tank, yeah, it really does showcase it very well. Other than that, I hope you did enjoy this video of the most overpowered tier 10 that I've ever used. It's definitely better than the Object 279E, which I did a video not that long ago about, and yeah, you can see how good that tank is and then compare this. Yeah, whoa, it's just fantastic. Really is great to see. If you guys have got this tank, let me know what you think of it. Do you think it is as overpowered as I'm making it out in this video, or do you not? Let me know. And of course, we'll get a lovely discussion going in the comment section. If you do want to check out another super overpowered tier 10 heavy, then of course you can check out the video on screen right now. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.